Good afternoon, Professor.
Good afternoon.
Today, I'm going to discuss with Professor Tatsuru Akimoto, who is complete his post degree in Japan, and he was started his career in law, but now he's practicing in social work. He was complete his DSW is it is related to PhD in America, and also he has working experience some other country, not only to Japan, India, Thailand, and other some countries, and also he is a former president of Asian APASE, Asia Pacific Association of Social Work. Now he is a retired professor, and also now he is became a director of Asian Research International Social Work affiliated to Sukutoku University, and with his team he has started in the research project 2015. Now 5 years already completed, and based on these 5 years he has completed some related Buddhist social work research and experience. There are some volume. Today my task is to have some common discussion about this research thesis volume and in related to his experience. I thought that this experience will help we all to know, get some idea about Buddhist social work. Yes, Professor Sensei. Actually, you already started from your career in the law, then again you moved to Western social work in Japan and moved to in America. Then again your idea has now little forward and changing to some other aspect in related to religion social work. Can you brief why you change your way how you practice?
Let me see. First, as you said, I was law student,
Okay.
but my major interest was not necessarily law itself, but the employment, labor, work of people, or their problems and difficulties and problems, or their so-called sufferings. And I started my study on the unemployed.
Okay.
At that time, Japan was, our unemployment rate was only 1.1% or 2%. Very small, very low.
Okay.
But I don't know why, and I can't remember why, but I was interested in that topic, and I went to the United States to learn about unemployment issue.
Okay.
And I lived in the urban slums of Detroit for 3 years. And partly coincidentally, I was introduced to one great social worker in that country. She was the president of the National Association of Social Work of the United States. And she was the professor of one university, School of Social Work. Also, she was the chair of City Council of Detroit, superwoman. And she was very interested in labor and employment issue as a social worker. We became very close, and I studied with her, or under her sometimes. So, my shift from law to social work was not necessarily my real choice. I was shifted.
Okay.
And I was involved in social work, and I was interested in social work very much.
Okay.
And in Japan, Japanese social work was not, and still is not, interested in the labor and work and employment.
Okay.
But over there, some people are very much interested in that field and very active as social work. That's the first step, my shift from law to social work. And since she was a real core person, top person of Western social work,
Yes.
the real top lady of National Association of Social Workers of the United States. So naturally, I studied American social work on master level and also later that doctor level. So without having any questions or doubts or nothing, I studied social work. That's a social work.
Okay.
And until relatively recently, I thought social work was social work. And that's, I didn't think that there may be another social work on this earth.
Yes.
But during when I was the president of international organizations, the president or vice president or board members of various international social work, I was a kind of, what do we say, flag weaver?
Yes,
I sold the typical social work to various parts of the world.
Yes.
It was my responsibility. But again, a sort of coincidence, the international community of social work had the idea to correct or change the international definition of social work.
Yes.
They were what called when they had international social work definition change. I was the president of a person, and I have to organize our organization. And we had, for example, one big workshop related to that topic. That's International Social Work Revision workshop in Japan College of Social Work in Tokyo. And about 10 countries people gathered. But as a kind of Buddhist or Eastern people, I thought we should listen to unraised voice, voiceless voice, which means the opinions, the comments, and ideas of people or the countries that did not attend the conference. They started visiting individually, visited various countries which did not attend that conference. And the first country was Vietnam. And in Vietnam there was one great professor whose name is Nguyen Hoi Lon.
It means how you move to Western social work
gradually to the Buddhist social work.
Buddhist social work. Can you explain a little about me to you? What is the Western social work means
It's not easy word, so
Yes.
I seldom use that word.
Mm-hmm.
I intentionally used, still I'm using the Western-rooted professional social work.
Yes.
It's again not, it's not easy to give any some clear definition, but maybe much easier for me to use that term rather than Western social work.
Okay.
Western-rooted means social work started in Western Europe,
Europe.
including UK,
Okay.
and they crossed Pacific Ocean to North America,
Okay.
and it matured
Mm.
and bloomed as a professional social work.
Social work. Okay.
And if you want to know what is social work, maybe just ask whoever he or she is around yourself, the social work students or social work practitioners. I think almost all of them may tell the same story or very similar thing. But at this moment, easiest answer might be just to look at that international definition or global definition of social work.
Social work.
That's a symbolic.
Yes. Yes.
It's maybe previous one, maybe a little bit easier to understand the Western social work.
Mm.
The current one has a little bit shift towards or deviated a little bit from the typical traditional Western social work.
Yeah, okay. Then you have some understanding about Western rooted professional social work, and you were practiced, and as a practitioner, as a teacher, you have worked some other university. Then later, you again convert your idea to some in the religion perspective. Can you explain to me and you what is the engineering social work understand about you?
Indigenous
Yes,
social work.
yes.
Let me see. Indigenous social work is not indigenized social work.
Mm-hmm.
Indigenized social. Indigenization is a very popular word now in the field, in the social work community all over the world.
Mm.
But indigenized social work is still Western-rooted professional social work.
Oh.
Even if it was indigenized, we indigenized Western social work.
Mm.
Just remember this maybe Christian missionary
Yes.
many years ago. They went to, for example, Latin American countries.
Mm.
When they went into those countries, even in Japan, they had to indigenize some part of Christianity, the practice, the church, clothes, or the way of speaking.
Yes.
A lot of indigenization was made, but still, what transmitted was Christianity, nothing different.
Mm.
So when I use the word of indigenization or indigenous social work, it's something before social work, something before Christian, Western-rooted professions of social work came in that society. So then the question would be how far we have to go back in the history. The 100 years ago, the 1,000 years ago. It's not easy, it's impossible to answer that question, how far we have to go back to be indigenous. For example, in Japan, feudalism society or much more primitive society. Anyway, each society has their own indigenous idea. And as far as social work is concerned, each country, or no, each society has a kind of helping, what you call relationship among people. Certainly, it depends on the definition of social work, but many people have been helping others, maybe voluntarily, without any return, expecting any return. Without those so-called social work, I think no societies could sustain themselves. So that's indigenous social work is something before social work before they receive the Western-rooted profession into that society.
Society, okay, that's called indigenous social work.
For me, of course, I know that UN and mainstream social work, international social work people use the term in different way. They are more what they call like the people who live in certain area, originally maybe the Pacific Ocean islands, in Japan, in case of Ainu, in Canada or the US, there are so-called Canadian native people. You know, some, I don't know if anyway, there are those people that they specify specific people in the minority people who are colonized in a sense. Colonization. Some people under developed country came in and colonized them in a sense. And those group usually are called indigenous people, indigenous culture, the preservation of culture and so on. But when I discuss indigenous social work in these issues, I am using a little bit different way.
Okay. Then again, after this concept, you were trying to find out in different countries, especially in Buddhist country, to find out how the indigenous social work practice in their country, so that you have started some research program. Can you explain the concept of this research and which you started in that time?
When I started the Buddhist social work in Asia, I did not use the word and term of indigenous social work at all. At this moment, when we discuss with Western-rooted professor and social work people, we may define Buddhist, not define, we may locate position with Buddhist social work within the term of indigenous social work. Could be. But when I discussed, we started this project, we did not discuss the, or we did not use the term of indigenous social work for Buddhist social work. We started as Buddhist social work.
Buddhist social work, yes. Okay, to start to research your Buddhist social work, you explained that you started from Vietnam and Sri Lanka. Can you explain how you started in the research study in Buddhist social work?
So actually, I did not start Buddhist social work. They started. They gave the Vietnam professor and the Sri Lankan one NGO leader.
Yes.
They provoked me. They questioned me. They intrigued my interest of Buddhist social work. As I said, when I visited Vietnam after that definition conference, that Professor Nguyen Hoi Lon
in
Vietnam. He was the first person who raised the word, who voiced the word of Buddhism in front of me.
Okay.
When we are talking about social work.
Okay.
And he was interested in the relationship between Buddhism and social work. And he said, in Vietnam, Buddhism came in 2,000 years ago. And since then, Buddhism has always around their life. So, values, sense of some ways of feeling, ways of thinking, or how to behave, morals, everything in that country, the people. All aspects of daily life have been influenced by Buddhism, or Buddhism. Some elements of Buddhism have infused in every corner of their life. Then, without learning, without thinking, without paying attention to Buddhism, it's impossible for them to carry out even Western social work effectively and efficiently. So those influence of the factors of Buddhism have infused in the people of Vietnam, regardless of their religions. Not only Buddhists, but also other people, religions or non-religion people. Still they have received, influenced with Buddhist, the Buddhism factors. That the first occasion interests me. And he offered, when I was, at that time I was the president of a Basel, he sent in a proposal, research proposal. Let's conduct such and such a research together on something. That's the first occasion.
It means in Vietnam, they think that they are part of in the Buddhism, their life. Yes, because they are doing every day-to-day activity, everything is based on their religion, and without absorbing the Buddhism into social work, it's difficult to practice.
That's the first idea which...
Yes, And then how you moved to in Sri Lanka?
Yes, the second country or the third country which I visited after that workshop in Tokyo. No. There is one interesting report
Okay.
titled Professional Social Work and its Functional Alternatives.
Yes.
This one, we developed this research because all people said, and today even say, social work is a professional social work.
Yes.
For example, when I was a student in the US, or even today I think, if professor asks us students, what is social work?
Yeah.
We have to answer that it's a profession.
Profession, yes.
Otherwise, I cannot pass the exam.
Yes.
Social work equal a professional social work.
Social work.
That's the core of the idea. But actually, in the world, on this earth, social work or very similar to social work. They do not use the word of social work, but very equivalent, similar activities as social work have been conducted by someone else. As I said, without those activities, it's impossible for the societies could sustain themselves. And when we do functional alternatives, means they do not call them social work. The Western people do not call them social work, but they function in the society, maybe very similar to social work.
Social work.
That's a functional alternative. That's a usage of that word. Sociologically speaking, that usage, the terminology, is not accurate, but intentionally I used that. And functional alternatives, and some countries picked up. We asked each country to pick up one functional alternative.
To prepare this.
Do it for that. So each country picked up. So the one country picked up spiritual healer traditional in some country.
What are the countries is supported to develop this volume in Vietnam?
Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia. Let me see. Indonesia. Excuse me. Cambodia, Fiji, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka.
Oh, 3 countries.
5 countries.
Oh, 5 countries.
And Sri Lanka was one of them.
Okay.
And at that time, his name is Mr. Anuradha Wickramasinghe, was the presenter, together with Gauri from United States.
Oh, yes.
They came in, and they split the division of work.
Okay.
But Mr. Anuradha Wickramasinghe picked up Buddhism as one functional alternative.
Okay.
As I said, some country spiritual healer, or some country picked up NGO. Each country picked up different functional alternative element.
Okay.
But Sri Lanka picked up Buddhism, and he did a very serious work. During that research, he interviewed many people, monks, high-rank monks, high-rank governmental people, and as well as some local people. And anyway, he made a kind of comparative research between these two. And just after that, we had another research project, and we gathered together some monks and lay people, Buddhist people. I started giving a kind of briefing on Western social work to them. As soon as I started explaining, they said, "Oh, we are doing the same similar.
Oh.
Since, well, what God, 2,500 to 2,600 years ago.
It means in Sri Lanka?
In Sri Lanka.
It means that same thing in Vietnam. Vietnam also they think the part of their life in Buddhism. Same in Sri Lanka also think that?
A little bit different because in case of the Vietnam,
Yeah.
first they said 2,000,
Okay.
they said 2,500
Oh,
years.
500.
Which means Sri Lanka was a country
Yeah.
where actually Buddhism was real Buddhism starts. Maybe in India it started, but
Yes.
so, and at the same time, in Vietnam I talked with a lay Buddhist professor, lay person.
Okay.
This time, some monks or more pure, purer Buddhist people gathered in that group. In Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka.
So
Okay.
what they said, oh, we have been doing as a monk
Okay.
or as a Buddhist people, we have been doing similar activities as present professional social work since 2,500 years ago. So Sri Lankan people said, refer to Buddhism or the Buddhist kind of social work. Of course, they did not use the word of social work, but they were doing as monks or temples.
Similar work they are doing.
Similar.
Okay.
That's another occasion which struck me.
Oh.
Importance.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Today you have allocated some time to have a discussion. It's very important, and this idea to at least think people to move their idea into some aspect in Buddhist social work. And thank you very much.
You're welcome.